Welcome to another edition of Dead Air Alive and the Somerville Film Group. Today we have a very special guest, Crystal Chandler, media maven in the making. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you, Jojo, for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Crystal, we met each other here at the Somerville Media Center.
Sure did.
Which is a very happening place these days.
Absolutely.
Somerville is an up and rising city.
Absolutely.
And it's been, I think, the All-America City 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, definitely.
In the history of the United States, which is pretty cool.
It's a unique little place here we have. Yeah.
You know, I met you, really got to know you the last show that we were producing with Dead Air Alive. And I was very intrigued. I was marveled at your attention to detail.
Thank you.
I was watching you because you were really put through the ringer. And you handled everything beautifully.
Thank you.
And I know that if you want to make it in this industry, you have to be detailed oriented. And then I had the pleasure of going out to lunch with you a few days later, and I got to talking to you, and I said, oh my goodness, you have such an interesting story. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you started out in the film industry, because your life is fascinating. So you can tell us whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm like, where do I even start? So I actually grew up in West Medford, so not too far from here. So really on the border of Somerville. I used to do a lot of stuff in Somerville all the time. But growing up, I was really into photography, actually. So I can't even remember how old I was, but I remember being pretty young and like asking for a camera for Christmas and for my birthday and everything like that. And I remember I had this like lime green, almost like lime, like the foliage here, like a lime green camera. And it also had like a video component to it. And I think honestly, that's kind of where I started getting into video. They were probably like the jankiest, worst like videos ever. They weren't very great, but you know, I got into it that way, and I just really enjoyed capturing the world around me. And I think that's kind of where I got my start. It was just like, what can I capture that looks cool around me? And as I got older, I kind of got more into like journalism, you know, writing journalism, photojournalism, also doing like videos. But I will say that honestly, what kind of like finally clicked in my head was, I'm not sure if you remember the earthquake back in Haiti in like, was that 2010, I think it was?
It was 2010.
So I was in high school, and I have a lot of friends who are Haitian, and so it had affected them very deeply. Like my family's from Barbados, so like we're all folks from the Caribbean. And to kind of see one of my best friends like just so devastated, it was just like, there was so much swirling around. We have a lot of Haitian Americans in this area, and I'll say that when I was watching the news and watching television, you know, I remember watching people like Anderson Cooper and Diane Sawyer and watching them just constantly bringing the news to people and, you know, just bringing messages from such a faraway place, just keeping the news just coming and coming, bringing the messages in. And I think there is really what solidified. I was destined. I was like, I'm going to go be on like Channel 7. I'm going to go work for, you know, do broadcast journalism, be like a news anchor. So that was actually my original goal. It wasn't even to do film. I wanted to be a news anchor on like the nightly news, be like the next Diane Sawyer, like Robin Roberts. Like she's definitely like one of my, you know, idols. And I still am definitely into broadcast journalism. But after I graduated, I went to Suffolk University for undergrad. After I graduated, honestly, like I found myself here at Somerville Media Center, and I'll say that this is kind of what kicked off everything else. I did start off doing television here, but I realized that there was such a big film community, and you know, I just started dabbling in it more and more and realized that I really love media production, like in general, but specifically like film and, you know, really having empowering stories behind it. So that's like, I guess, the Spark Notes version of my story.
Oh my goodness. So when you first got your first camera, your mother gave you a camera?
I think my dad got it for me, to be honest. Yeah, I want to say my dad got it for me.
And what kind of format were you working with back then? Because the formats have changed so much.
It was probably like 720 pixels. Like I know we're at 4K now. It was probably like not even that many pixels, like super grainy. I couldn't even tell you, but I just remember.
Was it VHS?
No,
Super
so it
8,
was
High 8.
I'm trying to think. I don't even think it took a card or anything. I think you had to plug the camera right into the computer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it wasn't even like, it might have had like a little tape in it, but I remember having to plug the camera right into the computer in order to get the footage off of it, because we didn't have anything that I could plug into the computer that would take the little chip or cassette that it had in it. Yeah, it's like so long. I just remember that it was just like lime green. It had a little flip out, viewfinder, and it was like the coolest thing ever because it wasn't a point and shoot. So.
And what's the first thing that you filmed and you went, oh, this is unbelievable?
Oh my goodness. I don't even know. It might have actually been like a selfie video, to be honest, or even just walking around my house. I remember walking around my house a bunch and just like recording everything and seeing how the lighting looked different and, the different audio settings and just how things worked on the camera. Definitely for video. And I can tell you for photography, I'd probably say one of the most memorable times, because I still have albums of photos. I was very much like that person who liked to print out all my photos and everything like that. But I do remember one summer I went to Toronto with my dad, and I took like photos of everything. And specifically, there's this one building in downtown Toronto. It's like massive, probably like as tall as like the Millennium Tower in Boston. And I just took a picture of it from like an angle, like looking up. So it just looked very elongated. And I just thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And it's still one of my favorite photos, but it's just interesting like how far I've come from then.
Do you have that photo?
I do, yeah.
Hopefully we can put that in
the video. Absolutely.
Okay, that would be great. So where did you go to photography school? Where did you learn photography?
So I actually was pretty much self-taught. I didn't I did do broadcast journalism in undergrad, so very like news-centered, like very video-centered, but all my photography was just kind of like me messing around my cameras.
In your broadcast journalism, did you do that at Suffolk?
I did, Suffolk University, and I have a minor in Spanish.
I thought Suffolk was only law.
And a lot of people think it's law, they think it's only business. There's actually a really good, excellent, I should say, broadcast journalism department, and we actually have our own studio, like television studio, called Studio 73. It's right on Tremont Street, 73 Tremont Street. And it's nice because you actually get like that real like city view, because people are actually walking by the window like they do in New York City and everything. And a lot of the students broadcast for NECN on Friday mornings. Yeah, at least we did when I was an undergrad.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So have you done anything with broadcast journalism here?
Yeah.
At Somerville Media Center?
Oh my gosh,
what is your role
so much. Where to even begin? So I currently work at Somerville Media Center. Before I was actually working here, I was volunteering on the Somerville Line show with Yvette Wilkes.
Oh, right.
And and eventually I became assistant director. I started doing hosting as well. I hosted the show. So I worked on that show for about 2 years or so. And I'd probably say like that's where I got my first start. And I always pay homage to her like every chance I get, because I always say, I really don't know where I would be without Somerville Media Center. And she's the one who introduced me to this place. She's friends with my aunt, and my aunt knew I'd recently graduated and, wanted me to be able to use my degree. She's like, oh, I have a friend that does like a TV show or something. And so she hooked me up with Yvette. And yeah, it was great. I mean, we've had like such amazing opportunities through the Somerville Line, and even, emceeing and co-producing the Evolution of Hip Hop event every fall right out in Union Square. We take over the parking lot behind the media center.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've done a lot. So that was with the Somerville Line specifically, but moving forward, I started doing my own thing, and I actually, in September of last year with Genevieve Angelique, we started a radio show / podcast called Boston Come Through. So I've actually moved into like radio a little bit. And yeah, that's been a wild and fun ride, to be honest.
Do you have a favorite do you like being on the radio, or do you prefer being
like on television?
Yeah.
I like radio. It's actually a little bit easier, I'd say.
Because you don't have to put makeup on?
Well, the thing is, we go live on Facebook, so I still do have to put makeup on most days, but I think it's less stress to have to like make sure everything is just like on point. because the majority of it is that it's audio, right? Even though people can be watching us on Facebook Live, like it's not weird if I have like my laptop out and I'm like, say like responding to people on Facebook Live, or we're like adjusting mic levels because it's just us two in the studio, and you know, my one friend Suzanne who's been helping us a little bit, but you know, I think it's just been a little bit easier because you just have a little bit more freedom to kind of like have wiggle room, and you know, you don't have to worry about like, okay, like which camera am I looking at or whatever. There's one camera, and then it's just us having a conversation. So.
And what are some of the topics that you do on Boston Free Radio?
So for our show specifically, Boston Come Through.
Is that the name of it? Boston?
Yeah, Boston Come Through.
And where can we hear that too, by
the way?
Oh
my goodness, yeah. So let me start off there. So you can find Boston Come Through on iTunes, Stitcher, Radio Public, Mixcloud, YouTube, Player.fm, and you can watch it live on Scat TV every Wednesday at 9 p.m. and listen on bostonfreeradio.com every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
So the reach is, of course, on the internet everywhere in the world, but here in the U.S., how far does it stretch?
That's a good question. I'm not sure in terms of the U.S. I actually just finished putting together our media kit because our 1-year anniversary is coming up. And so we're actually looking for sponsors and things like that for our 1 year. It's going to be a live show right in the main studio here at Somerville Media Center. Yeah, we're looking at about 50 to 60 guests in the audience. But I actually just finished our media kit last night, and I'm not sure domestically, but I can tell you we actually reach about 10 different countries, which is pretty cool. So far
10 countries?
Yeah, our website actually tells us like where people are kind of clicking from and like everything like that. So
really?
Yeah, some of them are pretty random. I know I think Costa Rica was one of them, Mexico, Canada, of course, the US, Philippines, Hungary, France, Spain. I'm probably missing a couple, but yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I was just looking at our analytics to kind of put together some numbers, you know, to show, you know, potential sponsors, just kind of our reach and everything like that. And I was like, what? Like, we reached like 10 countries? Like, who knew?
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. But in terms of topics, we are very, I would say, like, Black, millennial, creative, entrepreneurial, Boston focused. So very much like catering to creative entrepreneurs and like millennials inside of like the Boston and greater Boston area. I think for us, it's about having conversations that aren't typically had in a greater context, and also trying to provide a way and I'd say like different channels and avenues for people to understand that there are things going on by people of color in the city of Boston and greater Boston, and it does have a very thriving like social life and all that. So aside from the radio show and the podcast, which like I said, we talk about everything, to be honest. Obviously like business, you know, strategy and skills. We've talked about mental health. We've talked about relationships and dating. We've had some fun, goofy episodes. We did one where we were so tired. I think we pulled an all-nighter the night before, came and we were both tired. Somehow we ended up like matching. We both had on like flannels. I brought my sunglasses. I wore my sunglasses the whole show. Like that was probably one of the most memorable shows because in the beginning, I don't know what happened, but I started off into some type of prayer, and then the prayer just turned into like a 5-minute prayer just to open up the show. But yeah, I think that's probably one of our most memorable shows. But overall, we really do try and have these conversations that aren't being had in a greater context. And outside of the show, we also put together a weekly events listing of events that are either for us, by us, or of interest to us, is what we say. So some of them, yes, are definitely, most of them I should say, are hosted by people of color, but it's also trying to get people of color into spaces where we generally don't patronize as well. So it's a combination of the two. So we're doing a lot, long story short.
Oh my goodness. Well, yesterday I met someone that you interviewed last week.
Oh yeah.
Naomi Raymond.
Who
was Miss Black Massachusetts, and she also ran, I guess, for Miss Black USA.
Yeah, she did.
And how did you find her? Because she's my neighbor.
Oh my goodness. So Genevieve Angelique, my co-host, she actually lives in Somerville right now. And I want to say that Naomi goes to her mom's church or something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both Haitian Americans. And so that was the connection. And she had actually reached out to us and filled out our guest inquiry form on our website. And it just seemed like, you know, a good match. And I was like, all right, cool.
So people find you, they fill out a form?
Yeah.
But how do they find you?
So, I mean, I think a lot of it, honestly, is word of mouth, social media. I mean, we try and push. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you know, in terms of social media accounts. And we just try and push it as much as possible. A lot of our friends share our content. We share our own content as well. So, yeah.
So about social media, do you have to like do something every single day?
Honestly, I mean, most days, yeah, it's a lot of content posting. It's a lot of strategy, I'd say, behind our content posting. So we actually have a whole calendar that lays out kind of the type of content we post every week. So on Wednesday, you know, we post like a show promo. If we have a guest that week, we try and promo the guest by Monday or Tuesday of the week. On Thursday, we do the post-show graphic, which has like the episode number. We title all of our shows. We started to do... In the past, we were doing like a fun Friday video or like a good vibes video on Fridays. And then our weekly events listing goes out on Sunday, typically.
So because you have this great quality, you can edit.
Yeah.
Which gives you the competitor's edge.
Yeah.
You can edit, but you're also not only behind the camera.
Yeah.
You're also in front of the camera.
Yeah, I'm both. I'm like on both sides.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because I'm certainly still comfortable in front of the camera and talking and all that good stuff. I've been doing public speaking for a really long time as well. Even in undergrad, I was the commencement speaker for my graduating class. So
seriously?
Yeah, for the class of 2015 at Suffolk for the College of Arts and Sciences.
And did you have to audition for that?
So you did. What was nice about it, which I wasn't even aware of, I just assumed they just chose the person with the highest GPA, and I was like, that wasn't me. Like, I had a really good GPA, don't get me wrong, but I like wasn't at a 4.0. And Suffolk does it differently. I don't know how other schools do it, but they actually make you fill out this really long form. It asks you kind of like everything you've been doing over the past, 4 or 5, however many years you spent in undergrad. And then you actually have to write a sample speech as well, about a 5-minute speech. And obviously, like, when you actually get chosen, they like go back and help you edit it and all that good stuff. But I think I went through 2 rounds of auditions, and I made it to the 2nd round. A bunch of like, I don't even know who half the people in the room were. I just knew that some of them were like higher up people. I don't know if there were some board of trustees in there, but there were kind of people with, high stakes in university, and I read my speech in front of them, and yeah, they ended up choosing me, which is pretty cool.
Well, you're very well spoken.
Thank you.
And
yeah.
You definitely have charisma, so that helps.
Thank you. Yeah, it was nice, and I really did try and make the most of my undergrad career. Just taking advantage of every opportunity, like studying abroad. I mean, just, we also were out there, doing a lot of protests for a lot of the issues that were going on at the time. I know there was a lot of like police brutality and murders that were happening during my undergrad. So that was like a really big thing as well, and like protesting, but then also like attending different like community meetings and, going beyond just the protesting at like 11 o'clock at night when I was like throwing on my like sweatpants like and like running outside. But yeah, I did a lot of community organizing as well and being like a diversity peer educator. So I've always had a very like social justice lens to like everything that I do.
So when you came to work at Somerville Media Center, you came in as, what was your title?
So my official title is a front desk media coordinator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
great.
official title.
Yeah. And you've been here for,
I think
2
2 years now. Yeah, 2, which is like crazy, 2.5 years.
So one of the things that you told me, and I went, what?
Yeah.
That you're going to be working on a big
production. Yeah.
You're with Meryl Streep.
Yeah, this
Tell
is
us
like
about
so
that.
exciting. So Columbia Pictures is actually filming a remake of Little Women, which is the 1994 film. And yeah, as far as I know, Meryl's gonna be in it, and they're actually filming from essentially now until Christmas. So I will be working with them not too far from here. I'll still be doing the radio show, and I definitely hope to be back in January.
Well, how did they find you, or how did you find them?
So I have a friend named Fab, which is a great name.
That sounds like fabulous.
Yeah, I have a friend named Fab, and she does a lot of different like production assistant work on different TV shows and movies that come to Boston. And I want to say it was around her birthday. She wanted to take off, a couple of days and just enjoy her birthday, and she needed someone to cover for her. And she knows that, I do media production, all that good stuff. And so she asked if I wanted to cover. I was like, sure, why not? And so I ended up covering on an NBC show. It's for a pilot called Suspicion. And yeah, her boss, you know, was really great. She enjoyed working with me, all that good stuff. So when this opportunity came around, she actually messaged me directly. She had texted me and, you know, said, hey, like I have this thing coming up, would love to work with you again, and just, you know, shoot me over your resume. And I don't know, the rest is history.
The reason why she messaged you, because you're detailed oriented. In the film world, you have to be very detailed oriented or just get out of there.
Yeah, and just really proactive too, just being able to like think ahead of the curve, like not just doing the tasks assigned to you, but thinking, okay, like this is gonna need to get done in the next hour, the next day, the next week or month. Being able to really look ahead is key and crucial. Yeah.
So let me ask you, what are your dreams? What do you hope to achieve?
Oh man.
Because you're 20.
I'm 25.
Oh, you're 25.
Yeah.
I made you younger. Okay.
I know, I was like, that never happens.
Yeah. And you're 25. What are your hopes and dreams going forward?
About fame, because I actually have a friend, you know, he's like, oh my God, like you're going to be famous one day. I was like, I don't, like the famous part is like cool or whatever, but I want to be able to have a bigger impact, if that makes sense. So, you know, like making it to Hollywood, all that is like obviously like anyone's dream, especially as like a filmmaker and like media producer. But for me specifically, I always say that if I never make $1 million, that's okay as long as I know that I touched 1 million lives, right? And that's more of a legacy for me. So yeah, I do want to make it to Hollywood. I do want to have, you know, direct and produce my own films that make it, you know, into major theaters and all that good stuff. But I also do want to continue to, you know, keep my integrity and also do really good work in terms of storytelling and really uncovering stories that aren't told in very public ways. And that's why I wore this shirt today as well. So these are some of the female directors. So last year I went to the Urban World Film Festival and I did the press line and I got to interview the cast of Oprah Winfrey Network's Queen Sugar. So I got to actually interview Ava DuVernay, which is the last name on here. She's literally one of my like biggest inspirations in terms of movie directors. I went down there with Cordelia Moy, who does a show here at SCAD as well, Cordelia's Passion, and she was the host and I was doing camera and all that good stuff. But it was just such an amazing opportunity. And I think it's someone like her that I definitely aspire to be, because I think despite the fact that, you know, she definitely has made not only the money aspect, but also like the fame. And, you know, she's kept her integrity, and she's also been able to uncover stories that weren't publicly told. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of the documentary 13th, all about the 13th Amendment and how, great, we abolished slavery, but there was a clause in it that said, yeah, but it doesn't really, you know, count for people who are in prison and things like that. So that documentary was amazing, and just, you know, that's a story that no one talks about. And to get, you know, someone, I believe it was Newt Gingrich, I want to say, don't quote me on that, but she got one of these big politicians to actually admit that when they were creating the laws between crack and cocaine, that they disproportionately, you know, heavily policed and created like laws and things like that for crack, I should say, versus cocaine, because of who was using it, right? To specifically punish like the Black community. And like to get someone like on camera to say that was like, what? Like, and I even watched the, she did a little interview with Oprah after the fact, and she talked about that, and my mind was blown. I'm like, how did you get like, you know what I mean? Because like in the context, like crack and cocaine should be, you know, charged the same, yada, yada, whatever. But to get someone to actually say that, who was actually like behind the policy making, that was like massive. So she's definitely like someone who I would love to like work with, but then also like aspire to like follow in her footsteps for sure.
So some of the topics you want to cover? Oh
my gosh, so many. So I'm all about creating intersectional spaces and having.
What does that mean?
So when I say intersectional, what I mean is that none of us have one identity, right? So I'm a woman. I am, you know, Barbadian American, right. I am, right? So like I have all these different identities, like I wear glasses, right? So these are all my different identities. Like obviously it's a little bit more superficial, but you know, people have deeper identities, right? And so I want to talk about the ways in which our identities intersect. And one of them being, I'm actually about to launch a project that talks about mental health from different perspectives. So I'm starting with women of color, then I'm gonna move on to men of color, and just kind of like find these little niches of people who mental health really isn't talked about in very open and honest ways, and actually bringing in people to interview and talk about that. So these are some of the stories I want to uncover, because mental health is like super important to like me, you know, dealing with my own mental health, and like just coming through that journey is like so important and impactful to like who I am today, that like I want to continue to, you know, uncover stories and, you know, tell these stories in a way that people can receive a message that maybe makes their journey a little bit, you know, easier.
On a personal note,
Yeah.
you just said going through your own mental health.
Yeah, it's
what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so I probably like had like mental health issues my whole life, to be honest, but it's like when you don't have like the vocabulary or, you know, the know-how to know what's going on, I mean, you just kind of deal with it. You're like, oh, okay, like I'm feeling whatever type of way, not realizing that it could be like deeper issues, or that maybe like you actually should see someone type deal. But in 2014, yeah, it was actually my senior year of college, like my depression and anxiety got like crazy, like just trying to be like a senior in college, trying to graduate. I was also a resident assistant as well. So, you know, literally living where I worked. And then I was also working as a park ranger as well. So I had a job on top of all that.
You had a lot of pressure.
I had a lot of pressure.
Demands.
Yeah, definitely. So I think all of those things kind of like, aside from the fact that I do truly believe that it is like in, you know, like generationally, it's been passed down to me. Mm-hmm. But I think all of those things combined really manifested my senior year. And like, I don't think a lot of people would have known, because I was very like good at least from my perspective, I don't know from other people's perspective, but at least from in my head, I was very good at masking and making sure like, oh, okay, like everything is fine, but then like getting into my room and just like wanting to sleep, or like just being exhausted from like.
Were you drinking a lot of coffee too?
It's funny, I don't even drink coffee.
Oh, you don't?
No, I don't. It's so funny. Yeah, I never drink coffee, like, and I love the smell of it, and I probably needed it because I was like.
No, maybe it's good you didn't.
I know,
have
it's
it,
true. Yeah,
that would have just put you over the edge.
Yeah,
But
so
sometimes people drink a lot of coffee.
I know. Some people get like
and
jittery.
that's what happens.
But yeah, I think that was like, you know, all those things really manifested. And I just remember like going through like days where like you ever wake up and you feel like really groggy and like things just kind of like blurry. It was just,
Yeah, you're kind of in a fog.
I was in a fog.
Because you have sleep deprivation.
I was in a fog for months though. It was
that's
months.
not good.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so
that's
that was really like the key to it. And I will say, you know, forever be grateful and thankful to the Counseling, Health, and Wellness Office at Suffolk, because Teresa, she was one of the, like, she was actually the first therapist I ever saw. And it was just weird because I think therapy is stigmatized for like, you know, communities of color, and especially like in the Caribbean and stuff like that, like where my family's from. And I was just like, like, okay, like I'll see, you know what I mean? Like, I'll see how this goes. Like, I'm not really like for it, but it was like the most transformational experience. And I think also too, she was the first person who introduced me to the concept of actually like taking medicine for like my depression and anxiety, because it was that severe at the time. Like, I'm doing a lot better now, but I think at the time it was like I needed something. And I remember the first day I took my medicine, I want to say I took it like at night or whatever, went to sleep, woke up, and it was like a weird feeling of like, whoa, like, was I sleeping for like 6 years? Like, you know what I mean? I was like, I had like energy, like I woke up okay, like, you know, I felt refreshed. It was such a strange feeling because I got used to feeling groggy for all those months, like probably from like September to like February. I was like in a grog and a fog, like, because there's parts of my I'll be honest, like there's parts of my senior year that I really, like I vaguely remember or like I barely remember just because I was like so deep into like that fog. Yeah, it was a lot going on. There was a lot.
So you can relate to people that go through struggles.
Yeah.
With their minds.
Yeah, and like for me, it doesn't even really matter too much like what like issue it is, because what I say personally is that if you have a brain, you have a mental health, whether you're thinking about it or not, like whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether you're, you know what I mean? Everyone, if you have a brain, you have some type of like mental health. You fall somewhere on the spectrum of like mental health, right? Meaning like I'm doing great, like everything is awesome, or like, you know what I mean? Or maybe I'm in the middle somewhere, I have good days, I have bad days. Like everyone is somewhere because we all have a brain. So I really want to do my best to like really destigmatize a lot of these barriers that have been holding us back. Because I know there's so many communities who, you know, mental health has been so stigmatized that people are just continuing to suffer like generation after generation after generation because, you know, they say therapy is for white people, right? Like people of color aren't supposed to go to therapy.
I never heard that in my life.
And it's funny because it's so like, that's such a common narrative. It's like, oh, I'm not crazy, or like, that's for white people. Like, you know what I mean? Because like on television, stuff like that, you don't really see people of color going to therapy like that. So it gets in your head. And again, this is, also goes back
so are you saying that you've been programmed?
Yeah, I was say we've been programmed to think like that's what therapy is, that medicine is for crazy people, like, oh, I'm fine, you know, like drink some tea and have some Robitussin and you'll be fine, you know what I mean? Like,
that is not fair.
That's what I'm saying, like all these different like home remedies or like ways to self-medicate, but I think, you know, a lot of times we just need like a mental health professional, or maybe you do need some medicine.
Sometimes someone just needs someone to talk to.
Also that too,
you know, and here we are. This is great.
That's what I'm saying. That's all it takes sometimes. It's like, you know, having someone to talk to, having someone who can also help you navigate certain things. Because I think for me, one of my like later therapists, Jennifer, she was like really great because I started getting a lot of like anxiety attacks and stuff like that. I'd probably say like last year and like the past few years. I don't really get them anymore, but it's also about teaching daily coping mechanisms, right? So like a trigger for me would be like in the morning, like getting ready and like having to like figure out what clothes I want to put on. That would cause me a lot of anxiety, and she would teach me different ways I could navigate my morning, or if I knew I was actually like feeling like I was going to have like an anxiety attack, you know, doing things like actually holding something that's cold, you know what I mean? Like whether it's ice cubes. She also said like I could freeze an orange and just play around with it in my hands.
What does that do?
Well, that's the thing. So it actually helps to change like the physical temperature of your body, which also helps to take your mind off of like, it's like a lot of subconscious stuff. Yeah, it like physically changes.
Holding a cold ice cube?
Like holding a cold ice cube, or like, you know, I would freeze an orange and just kind of play with it in my hands and stuff like that. There's a number of different ways. There's also a little, it's like a website that the only thing that's on it is this hexagon, and the hexagon, you know, goes up, expands, and then goes back in. You're actually supposed to like breathe with it. Like if you're going through anxiety or anything like that, you just like inhale and then out and exhale. You know what I mean? So little stuff like that. Just
this is great stuff.
Yeah,
and
honestly,
you know what? Everybody needs this.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, we all have times when, you know, we're just not okay. Like, it's really that simple. Right. We all have times, you know, for some people that not okay period lasts a little bit longer. But I think, again, that's my goal, is to really destigmatize all the ways in which, you know, we tell people who are not okay that, you know, it's not okay to not be okay, if that makes sense. Like, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have like down days, you know what I mean? Whatever it may be. It's when these things are prolonged is when we really have to think about, okay, like, do we need to like seek out therapy? Do we need to, because I think part of it too is like, you know, talking to your friends and things like that can only bring you so far, right? Like your friends aren't necessarily, you know, licensed mental health, you know, clinicians.
They're not trained.
Yeah, and so like I think, you know, talking to the people around you, you need a support system, right? So I'm not negating that, but I think you also have to understand like where that support stops and where you have to kind of seek out, you know, more professional services.
When you were going through your tough times, did your friends say, hey, Crystal, something's going on? Or did anyone step up and tell you something? Or was it you yourself that noticed that?
Yeah.
I need help?
I want to say it was a combo of the two. I think definitely when it got a lot worse, I know like my two best friends, like Tammy and Dharma, like they definitely had noticed, and even like Tammy saying like, yo, like, you have to like, you got to do something, you know what I mean? She's like, you're not happy, you're not happy. I just remember her telling me like, you're not happy, you're not happy. But yeah, I think eventually when things started to get like out of hand, where like I couldn't just walk around like smiling and like passing it off, is when people really started to see it. And specifically with them and my boyfriend at the time too, like he, you know, took the brunt of a lot of it, you know what I mean? Like that's who you're closest with at the time.
He was your whipping boy?
No, he was actually really great, to be honest. He would actually learn like, which was like the craziest thing. He actually one time learned like a technique to actually like, almost like calm me down. So it's, you take your thumb, you actually just like rub it between someone's forehead. Yeah, I don't know if you could do it to yourself. It doesn't really work when I do it to myself, but if you do it to someone else, it's supposed to be like a calming type deal. So like when I was anxious and stuff, it was like I would literally just lay down and he would like rub my like middle of my forehead. Just something really random.
Is
but
this your
like
third eye you're rubbing?
I guess, yeah, something along those lines. But yeah, I had a pretty good support system, but I think also too for me it was about getting over the fact that like a lot of the stigmas, you know, and just saying like I'm actually not okay and like I need some help, you know, because I was very used to like being just like achieving and just being successful in all that I achieved. So it was
you're an overachiever.
Yeah, it was like this juxtaposition of like I'm out here like getting great grades, you know, I'm the commencement speaker of my graduating class, this and that, yada yada. But at the same time, I'm over here, you know, struggling, like really, really struggling. So it was this weird like juxtaposition of like who the world saw and then what was actually really going on behind the scenes. So yeah.
Well, so you are going to make a very big difference in the world.
Yeah, that's my goal. That's really my goal.
Well, you're already doing it.
Thank you.
You're already doing it.
Thank you.
So, final words.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell anyone who wants to get into this industry? Because you've started at a young age.
Yeah.
You had aha moments.
Yeah.
At a very young age. What would you tell them to let's say, walk in your footsteps?
Yeah.
Because it's not easy. You have to work.
Definitely.
You have to put a lot of hours.
Yeah, and it's a lot of sleepless nights. I mean, I think I went to bed at like 6 this morning, to be honest. Like,
what were you doing last night?
I mean, I was working on the radio show for Boston Come Through. Our 1-year anniversary is coming up. Genevieve and I mean, it's our show, so we're like doing all this planning. Like I said, I was up till like 6 doing our media kit, creating this like beautiful, and it came out great, don't get me wrong, but you know, it takes a lot of those extra hours to really get the work done. So I think that would be one thing, is like really dedicating your time and, you know, knowing when to say no. I've missed tons of parties. I've missed a lot of events and things like that.
Oh, there'll be tons of parties.
Exactly.
In your life.
So that's what I say. But then also too, I think a big thing is recognizing when you also need to take a step back and maybe like, you know, go enjoy yourself. I know, I believe it was last Monday, Genevieve and I, you know, we were supposed to have a meeting at like 9 o'clock at night, which like it happens. We literally have meetings at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And we ended up at one of my friend's barbecues on like a Monday night. And we're like, you know what? We both needed this. We were both tired, you know? So I think it's also about that too, recognizing when you need to prioritize your own self-care and just be persistent. Like ask questions, you know, if there's someone who you look up to, you know, reach out to them. Like a lot of people are willing to grab, you know, a bagel and coffee with you. That's all I can really say, is you really have to be persistent, you know, and just if you want this, you will find creative ways to achieve it. I mean, the number of people I've like knocked on their door saying like, hey, can I just chat with you? Like even when I go to other cities, I look up, you know, Suffolk alumni to say like, hey, like who are working in broadcast journalism, just to, you know, connect with them. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are my kind of like my keys.
Beautiful. Crystal, you have been delightful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining
you.
us today. Crystal's amazing. I'm glad we had a chance to speak with you, and thank you, audience. We will see you at the next show. Have a good night.